Welcome to the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, episode number 61. The road to hell is paved with works in progress. Philip Roth.
Broadcasting from the back alley in Hollywood, it's the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, where we show you how to survive and thrive as an indie filmmaker in the jungles of the film biz. And here's your host, Alex Ferrari.
Welcome, my indie film hustlers, to another episode of the Indie Film Hustle Podcast. I am your humble host, Alex Ferrari. Don't forget to head over to freefilmbook.com. That's freefilmbook.com to download your free film audiobook from Audible. And today's show is sponsored by Screenwriting and Story Blueprint, the Hero's Two Journeys, taught by the legendary Michael Haig and Chris Vogler, our guest today, which I'll get to in a minute. You can head over to indiefilmhustle.com/story blueprint. That's indiefilmhustle.com/story blueprint. And it is on sale for $19 until April 4th. So hurry. So guys, I want to welcome you to a very special episode. A special episode to me because today we have on the show Chris Vogler. Chris is the writer of The Writer's Journey, an integral and amazing part of my development as a storyteller. This book kind of changed my life. I read it when I was in college 20-odd years ago. And basically, he takes the works of Joseph Campbell, The Hero's Journey, and translates it for filmmakers. And he worked at Disney for about almost 10 years. He was there while they were making Beauty and the Beast and Lion King and all these kind of, the pinnacle of Disney's power. And now they're going through another renaissance right now. But then he actually kind of changed the game when he wrote this amazing memo telling everybody what every story had, the hero's journey. And if you haven't heard about the hero's journey or have not heard that concept before, definitely sit back and relax and take a listen to what Chris is going to talk about. And also take a look at that course that he and Michael wrote, Screenwriting and Story Blueprint, The Hero's Two Journeys. So without further ado, I'm not going to yap anymore. Just let's get into it with Chris Vogler. So, Chris, thank you so much for being on the show. We really appreciate you taking out the time.
I'm very glad to be here. Glad to talk to you.
So just so everybody knows in the audience, I read Chris's book, The Writer's Journey. I don't want to date anybody, but over 20 years ago. And it definitely changed the way I look at stories. So for that, I thank you very much, sir.
Hey, you're welcome. Yeah, I was a very young, youthful author.
Very youthful. You must be 30 now. So you did it when you were 10.
Right.
Fantastic work.
That's right. Yeah, amazing.
So how did you start in the film business?
Well, I had a path that led me through journalism school first back in Missouri, where I'm from. And then I got into the Air Force, and they sent me out to Los Angeles. I was lucky. It was the middle of the Vietnam War. And instead of going to Vietnam, they sent me to L.A., and I worked for an outfit that made documentary films about the space program and so forth. And after that, I got to go to film school on the GI Bill and went to the USC school. And that's really where things came into focus for me, because I encountered the work of this man, Joseph Campbell, who wrote The Hero with a Thousand Faces and was a big influence on George Lucas and many others. And that kind of, focused me on my quest to find out what stories were all about. So that, and also there was a class at school that was important called Story Analysis for Film and TV, and that was like a career pathway for me, because it showed me that, thinking critically and writing about stories and reacting to things intelligently was, a way I could make a path for myself into the business.
Now, what about Joseph Campbell's work really kind of drew you in, and what was the revolutionary part of his work that kind of, really sparked something in you?
Well, as a kid and just a pure consumer of movies and TV from the Midwest, I grew up on a farm. It was, wonderful and mysterious to me how they sort of hypnotized me with these great images and all that. And I was on a quest. I was trying to figure out. I was looking for the book. Where's the rules of this? Where's the physics of it? Where's where's the color chart or the periodic table or the theory of how they do it? And, I got to film school and I found out, well, there really isn't anything like that. And then just sort of by accident, I found the work of Campbell, and he wasn't thinking about movies, but he had thought long and hard about mythology and these patterns he kept seeing about heroes and how that related to, current findings in psychology, especially the work of Freud, but more Carl Jung, the Jungian school. So he was combining the patterns of old mythology with modern psychology and kind of handing it back to us and saying, okay, here's what's hidden inside all these stories, advice for how to live. And that turned out, I thought, to be a great blueprint for telling stories and communicating with an audience. So that was my breakthrough about it.
Now, can you talk a little bit about what the hero's journey is?
Yeah, this is a pattern that Campbell found in the ancient myths. He kept seeing the same sort of signposts over and over again. And he had, somewhere between 16 and 20 different events, psychological mostly, events that would occur in almost every story. I worked with a little, refined it down to 12 things. But the essence of it is, everybody at some stage in their life has an ordinary world that they know, and then they're going to go into something new and different, and a new relationship, new job, a war starts, or a catastrophe happens, or a health crisis, whatever it is, you're going to be in a new world. And so it's about exploring that world and how the difficulties of it can almost kill you. That's sort of the essence of it, that this is, change in life is dangerous, and it can be threatening, but that can also change you and make you stronger and more resilient and more alive and conscious and human. So that's the basic essence of it. People start in an ordinary world. They go out, either because they're itchy inside or they are being forced to it by outside circumstances, and they explore something new. There's often a mentor who helps them. That's an important part of it. The presence or absence of somebody who can guide you and be a role model, kind of. But that's the essence of it, that you are transformed by an intense experience of going through a change and entering a new stage of life, and you're not the same. You come out as a different person. So that's kind of the essence of the idea.
So would you agree that for people who are not familiar with the hero's journey, a great movie to illustrate this would be Star Wars, the original one, the Episode 4, The New Hope?
Yeah, that was, it's always been the easiest way to show where the signposts are, because George Lucas was very conscious of Campbell's work. He had read about it even before film school. He was aware of Campbell because he had, studied anthropology and various other things, and found Campbell that way, and had the same, I think, insight I did, that, this would be great for plotting stories and giving them a little bit of this mythological resonance and psychological reality. So, it's easy to see the signposts because he made them big. He made all of the turning points very clear and obvious. The pattern calls for a call to adventure, and there's the Obi-Wan Kenobi.
The literal. The literal call for adventure.
Yeah, there's literally this call to, everything is literal like that. There's supposed to be the handing off of some kind of relic of the past that's going to guide you and help you. And so he gets his father's lightsaber from Obi-Wan Kenobi. There's supposed to be a mentor. There's Obi-Wan Kenobi, and so forth. When they come to the cantina. That's a typical situation in these stories, that you go to a bar or a saloon or a watering hole or something, and you find out what the new world is like, and then boom, you take off. And that's an important part of the pattern too, that sense in the audience that we know there's some preparation that needs to be done to meet the hero and figure out what the problems are, but then we want the story to, boom, take off. And that should happen, ideally maybe 20 minutes or so into the film, half an hour in maybe, but it's going.
When he jumps on the Millennium Falcon, basically.
Yeah, when they go off, it's very, very clear.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
And, there's other things, too, that I think make it easy to see. The yearning of the hero, when he looks out at the twin suns on the planet, he just wants to get out there and, but he's stuck. He's a farm boy. But then, boom, this rush of events takes over. And then he meets all kind of monsters and, almost dies a couple of times. And that's par for the course on this hero's journey deal.
Now, can you break down, at least just give a basic understanding for people who don't understand the basic 3-act structure and how that might also translate into a trilogy as well? Like, because I know I'm going to use Star Wars again, The New Hope, Empire, and Return, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, there's a beautiful thing going on with all of this current study that people are doing of story structures and narrative and so on, which is at first my competitors and I, who were doing seminars and workshops and writing books, all hated each other and were jealous of each other. And then, and said that other guy's system is stupid and mine is the only one that works. That was normal procedure. But we got over that and we all mostly realized we're all talking about the same thing. And it's human and it's kind of hardwired. So these things beautifully start to overlap. And, sort of parallel to my 12-stage pattern is something called the 3-act structure, which was really pioneered by a man named Sid Field, who is a wonderful man.
Of course.
Last year or so, and was a real pioneer because he laid out this unwritten rules of storytelling that he sort of put together as what they call the paradigm of 3-act structure. And there's nothing all that earth-shakingly new about it, but just like my idea with the hero's journey, this can be traced back easily to at least Aristotle, who talked about, you need a beginning, a middle, and an end. And the energy, I think, is what's important to grasp about the 3-act structure. It's, to use a metaphor, it's like drawing a bow. You're pulling back in the first act. You're loading that bow up with energy, and then you're taking aim in the second act and dealing with the wind and all the other challenges. And then you fire it in the third act, and your intention or the situation of the hero, finally goes to some kind of target, and either hits or misses, and if it misses, it's a tragedy, and if it's a hit, then, you've got a comedy, happy ending. So, that's one way to look at it. And there's, many metaphors that you could use on this, but that's a good one. That you're gathering energy, you're building tension, then you're really zeroing in on critical things, and then sort of launching the whole thing in the final act, and that overlaps with my pattern. Yeah.
So, like a movie like Pulp Fiction, which it's a very unique structure. Can you kind of break down, because it's genius because it follows the hero's journey in its own structural way. Am I wrong in that, or can you break that down a little bit?
No, that's a really interesting and challenging one to analyze because it's so ambitious. First of all, those guys, the writers of that, were trying to Roger Avery and Tarantino were trying to deconstruct things and tell multiple stories, and that's very challenging. And they chose to do them out of sequence and play around with our expectations of what will happen in order, and that's refreshing. But you can undeconstruct it, you can reconstruct it, and sort of lay it out in a linear way. And it's a very, in some ways, conventional storytelling that they're doing. The heroes, on all the different threads of the story, have an ordinary world. They all go through some kind of drastic challenge and change and enter into some new situation. And again, they either hit or they miss. I mean, that's the beautiful thing, especially about the main story with John Travolta and
Sam Jackson, right?
and Samuel Jackson, is that one of them, Tarantino, sees this. They have this miracle happen where they're supposed to all be shot to pieces in a drug shootout, and miraculously, Sam Jackson says they're missed, and he says that's a clear sign from God. We were spared for a purpose, and so my life has changed now. And Travolta says, "Hey, that was just a coincidence. It doesn't change anything." And the story sort of sits in judgment of those guys, and at the end, the writers give Samuel Jackson eternal life and say, you're going to go on and be like the guy in Kung Fu who travels around righting wrongs and doing good in a nice Zen kind of way, doing little harm and little bloodshed. And Travolta is killed getting off the John. He jumps off the toilet, and Bruce Willis shoots him to death. So,
spoiler alert.
The story. The writers, sit in God's chair kind of and give their judgments on how do you react to this new thing that's in the middle, in the second act, the challenge, and then how does it land in, so to speak, the third act, although it's all messed up, in the editing process. Sequentially, it's you can still make that kind of clear moral sense out of it.
Now, in your opinion, what makes a good hero and a good villain?
This is great. They're sort of mirror images of each other, sort of reflections of each other. A good way to look at all the characters is that in some way, everybody else in the movie is like another possibility of the hero. That even the love interest, male or female, is like your opposite side or your opposite possibilities. The villain is the dark possibility of you. The clowns and tricksters around you, those are the funny possible versions of you. So the villain is some kind of mirror image first. But what makes a good hero is somebody who's complex and they're broken somehow. That seems to be really deeply essential in all the way back to the mythology, is that the hero will be strong and powerful and, maybe like Hercules, stronger than everybody else, but he's got problems. And there's something broken or something wrong with him. In his case, it was dealing with women, and sometimes he misjudged situations and would go off on people or, caused a lot of problems because he was so impulsive. So, all the way back in the mythology, this idea is planted that the hero is more believable and more human because they're imperfect.
With that said, I don't mean to interrupt you. Because I just wanted to make a real point here. Yeah. A good hero, like you said, are those flawed heroes. Is that one of the reasons why it's so difficult to write for a character like Superman, who's essentially a god? With the movie coming out this weekend, I was just curious on your take on that, like that specific character and how difficult sometimes it is to make those kind of characters work as a hero.
Yeah, that's certainly a very interesting franchise to me, partly for those reasons, that he's a mythological character, and as you say, he's got some semi-divine potential. I actually was called in at one point by one of the studios to, sort of put Superman on the couch and shrink him and put him through my mythological process. And, this is, I think, at a point when they were trying to decide, are we going to do Batman versus Superman? This was many years ago. That was considered. This current film has a long, long history.
Oh, yeah.
But they asked me to sort of shrink Superman, and it was all about the flaws and the limitations. That's what makes him interesting, is that even though he's invulnerable most of the time, there's still conditions like kryptonite and red and green kryptonite that have different effects on him. And then he's emotionally kind of a train wreck in some ways. And that's, charming. That when he puts those glasses on, for some reason, he becomes shy and bumbling.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now, back to the show.
And can't say what he really thinks, and is just, very, very easy to identify with. So, you kind of get the best of both worlds. It's a superhuman set of possibilities, but with some realistic limitations. And then,
but that's why I think Batman. Well, yes. That's why Batman is such a relatable character because people can identify with him. He's much more popular than Superman. In many ways. It's
very, very interesting how we use these characters as meditation devices or something. And we think through the stories about, different developments. What does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a patriot? You even look at the colors of Superman's costume or Batman's design, his costume. And it just, is sort of a mirror reflection of what's going on in society at the moment, or what society thinks is important. So, Batman, for some reason, that one seems to be a laboratory to experiment with all kind of different kind of dark, brooding thoughts. But there's such a range within Batman that people can just turn the dial to comedy and grotesque silly things and get a big kick out of it and even find meaning in it, but then turn the dial the other way to Batman is a complete lunatic and a reflection of the nuttiness of our own society. So it's really fun to see how the writers do this, but also really how the consumers are using it to figure stuff out. It's just entertainment, they say it's just cotton candy for the mind, but there's much more going on in even the silliest things.
And you were continuing with the villain. What makes a great villain?
Yeah, just I think very much along the same lines, and the kind of fundament that there should be a lot of powers, but also limitations. And especially when you are dealing with magical figures who have, vast magic powers, one of the things that helps is to make a rule. It costs something. That every time you do something bad or something magical, it's not free. It costs you something. You may lose. You may become partially paralyzed. You might become blinded. Every time you use your X-ray vision or whatever, and that just makes the game so much more interesting that he can do anything. And then for the kind of more everyday villains, I think it's useful to realize they don't think they're villains. They think the hero of your story is the villain. That they're totally convinced they're right. They have built, their whole life is built around their view of the world. And so, again, they're the mirror image of the hero. And when the hero is up, they're down. When the hero's happy, that doesn't make them happy. And vice versa. When they're happiest, the hero is the most miserable. So they make diagrams, they make waveforms, and they're perfect mirrors of each other sometimes.
They balance each other. They're the yin and the yang.
Yeah, they balance each other. And then there's the whole idea of archetypes, which is something I got out of Campbell's work, also from Carl Jung, who said inside everybody there is a cast of characters, basic characters, a mother, a father, a hero, a villain, an angel, a devil, all these kind of basic human possibilities. And at first I thought the villain is the villain and should be, really mean and tough all the time, and the hero should be heroic all the time, and the mentor should be mentory all the time, and so forth. But then I realized life ain't like that, and people have different masks that they wear. Maybe you wear 20 different masks in the course of one day. That you're a tough guy one minute, and you're a coward the next minute, and you're a teacher one minute, and and so forth. So
right.
the villains are wearing a mask, most of the time of the villain, but there's other masks in there. And again, they can show kindness, they can be heroic, they can be a teacher to the hero, they can feel sorry for the hero and almost spare the hero. All these things make them more interesting than just I'm here to make your life hard. So these shadings are what make it realistic and more fun.
Now, the hero's journey is become. And it hasn't become, but I guess it is so relatable to so many people around the world, regardless of religion, society, language. Is that because it's just something that is hardwired into every human being, no matter where you come from?
Yeah, there are two things in operation here, and one of them is that I do make that assumption that in the course of evolving into human beings, we created a whole bunch of structures like families, for instance, and societies. We created these structures, and stories are one of those. I think we actually grew a part of the brain that handles that allows you to think in metaphors and imagine people, when somebody's just talking to you and saying, once upon a time there was a little girl, you somehow create that world and the little girl. And that's all part of being human. But the other side of it is then you have millions and millions of examples of these things in the form of stories. And people are swimming in an ocean of stories in their lives. And even if it wasn't hardwired, we'd all be taught by Hollywood movies and TV and the myths and legends of our cultures. We'd all be taught what are the basic rules of these things, and what is the shape and the effect. But I go back to the first one, that it's hardwired, because it seems that certain images and situations will very reliably trigger emotional and physical reactions in the audience. Things like people in trouble, people helping, and sacrificing their own lives to help somebody else, somebody sneaking up behind you to threaten you. All those things get physical reactions, and it's pretty reliable across cultures. So there's something that hardwired.
So would you agree that, and this is something I've always told people that ask me about story, I'm like, well, if there was no story in the world, I don't think the human experience can move forward. Like, just on a daily basis, how many times do you just tell, how was your day at work? That's a story, and all these kind of things. Do you agree with that? Like, without story, we just couldn't move forward.
Yes, it would be a very different world. I suppose there is an engineering version of the world where, everything would be expressed only as mathematical formulas or diagrams or something. But even that's a metaphor, and a metaphor is telling some kind of a story. The world is made of numbers. That's as much a story as Peter Pan. So, I think it's true because of the fact that it's just so hardwired into us. People say, I remember this when Johnny Carson died. A lot of people said, what's it like to be Johnny Carson? In other words, you couldn't really tell me how it was to be Johnny Carson, but what's it like? And give me a metaphor. It's like being the king, or it's like being on top of the world, or it's like being under a spotlight. All those are metaphors, and they tell little stories. So we think in poetry and metaphors just automatically, and it's so embedded in the language we don't even realize it. Like I just said, it's embedded in the language, and so I've created a metaphor that there's a mass, and then inside that mass, like raisins inside a loaf of bread, there's embedded these ideas. So these things are hard to escape, and you kind of can't see them because they're so dominant. But
now,
there's good things about it because it does allow us to communicate and to get ideas across and convince people of things by telling it in the form of a story, as all politicians know very well. It's one thing to say, it's one thing to say the veterans are being mistreated.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
But it's much better to say, here's a veteran, and this is what happened to him, and look, and he, had all this sacrifice, and now he's suffering, and so now, wow, that's a whole different level of relationship and identification. So it's powerful.
I see it with my daughters who are 4, how story impacts them, and how I'm using story now just to kind of relay core, as George Lucas said, the meat and potatoes of our society, like. The boy that cried wolf, don't lie, things like that. It's so powerful, and how these stories like the Grimm tales and things like that, they just go on from generation to generation. And now the Disney stories and the movies and stuff like that, movies that I saw when I was growing up, now I'm showing them to my girls. And Star Wars is one of those, kind of the new generations are catching up with that, the stuff that we grew up with. Younger, it's just fascinating to watch. Now, are we all on our own hero's journey, basically?
Yes, that's one of the biggest insights I had. By the way, your daughters are very lucky because you're keeping up this ancient tradition and you're not outsourcing it to the technological stuff. That's part of it, but introducing them to it and talking to them about it, reading the stories to them especially, is critical. But that was the big insight from the very beginning. I said, wow, when I read Campbell's book at film school, I kind of skimmed through it. I'm a good skimmer, and I skimmed through it on the bus on the way home. And by the time I got off the bus, my whole life had been changed. And one part of it was, this is great for making movies. This will make better, more entertaining, more international movies. But at the same time, I was aware this is a great guideline for living. It's a template, and it's a metaphor. It's telling you a story. Once there was a person who lived somewhere, and they went someplace, and it changed them. But it's just so clear to me that our ancestors thought it was important, and they preserved it in the form of stories because it's your guidebook for life, for how to deal with the inevitable things. Things are going to come along and wreck your plan, no matter what that plan is. And so how do you deal with that? And the stories are just an infinite well of options and solutions and failures, that too, examples of tragic failures. So,
Now, what?
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I was going to ask you, how do you know you're reading a good story when you're reading one? I'm sure you've read a few scripts in your day.
Yes. The number count, it's hard to say how many, but it's well above 20,000. People find that hard to believe. But there's no question that, I have file cabinets filled to prove it of my reports, that I've analyzed 20,000 stories at least. And, the elements of the good one are, I'm a sucker for poetry and for just good writing. And I now am sort of ruined as a reader because I have low tolerance for bad writing. And I'm talking here about just how do you compose a sentence? And
right.
there are people who, they might be giving you good information. I'm reading a book about the city of Venice right now in Italy, and it's good information, but it's given in this very flat way. Venice was a big city in the 1400s. It was important, and there's no music or poetry in that at all. But I appreciate so much the beautiful writers. Now, screenplays are special. They're supposed to be very spare and simple and short sentences like that for the most part. But there's just a confidence that you feel when somebody knows how to build nice, pretty sentences. Not fancy, but elegant. So that's I know this is very subtle and hard to pin down what I'm saying. But beyond that, the simple thing for, like what makes a good screenplay is, man, they grab you right away. And you know right where you are and who it's about, for the most part. They're very clear about, this is the hero. I'm spending a little time describing her. I'm maybe giving her some special behavior at the beginning that gets my attention. Why is she doing that? And that hooks me in. There are scripts you read 20 pages and you don't know who it's about, and you don't know what it's about, and you don't know, is this the main location, or is this a little prologue, or, there's a lack of clarity. So I just like it when things are simple and clear, and that's a sort of a motto of mine from that classic old romantic comedy, It Happened One Night. Clark Gable.
Oh, yeah, Clark Gable.
Yeah, Clark Gable's a reporter in that, and his motto is simple stories for simple people. And it's not condescending. It's a really good artistic rule. Just keep it simple. Tell me the story, and make it elegant in language and so forth if you can. But be clear. Above all, that's another thing. I'd rather be clear than pretty in my writing and my storytelling. And pretty means, sometimes, overly flowery. It can also mean, look how cool I am. I'm not telling you who this guy is, and I'm going to make you wonder what's going on for a long time, or I'm not going to tell you. That sort of razzle-dazzle is...
or using 75-cent words. When
yes, that's
a 10-cent word
sure.
will do.
Yeah. Or another version of it is, and then the camera, using a Zeiss Icon lens with a 35 millimeter diopter on it, moves gently down the corridor at about 3.6 miles per hour, and then this kind of over directing is another version of it.
Have you read scripts that have that kind of? I mean, I've never heard that distinctive, but have you read something like that?
Yes, it does come up every once in a while, and I think it's generally from someone who isn't confident and hasn't done it very often before, and they're trying to prove, look, I know all this stuff. I took a class, or I read a book, or I went to film school, and I myself, I think there was a little bit of that in some of my early scripts, because also people have a passion. They see it in their head so clear, they want to make sure it's down there on the page. But I learned better ways to do that than to say, please put the camera on a tripod about 4 feet off the ground. Not that, but you indicate stuff like that by he looks up from under his eyebrows, and she sees a flash of light in his eyes, and that makes the shots in your mind better than saying, with a tight close-up, just up from his eyebrows down to his nose. You don't have to do that. You just draw attention to the detail you want to see, the gun.
That's a great note.
And it is important, these things about the body, hands, skin, eyes, referring to those in the text, it kind of creates the close-ups. Just writing that in your slug line, his hand near the gun, that's better than saying a tight close-up or that. You see it in your mind immediately.
So you worked at Disney for a while, correct?
Yeah, that was I guess that was the longest run I had at any of the studios. I had two sort of like military tours of duty at Fox on either side of that. At Fox as a reader and then later as an executive. But in the middle was about 10 years at Disney, and that's a long run in Hollywood.
That's a long run.
Yeah, your normal gig is about 2 years. Honestly, people.
So you were doing something right.
Jobs. Well, I was doing something right, but also within those 10 years, I worked for about 4 or 5 companies within Disney. So I kept changing over, and as a new company was developed, like they created Touchstone, Hyperion Pictures, and various other, and then there was Imagineering
Hollywood Pictures,
and Hollywood Pictures, and all these different divisions. And as each one was created, I would come in and write some memos and read some scripts for them, and get involved. And I was a little bit conscious of that, trying to.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
Diversify and get as much stuff into my portfolio as I could. And that's a sidebar here, but very important. A lot of my thinking and work these days is about branding. And somehow, intuitively, I was good at that. And before the internet, I created a kind of viral marketing for myself through the means of the Xerox machines and fax machines and stuff like that. I spread a viral idea through the mind of Hollywood, which was this memo that I wrote when I was at Disney, and the memo simply took Campbell's academic idea and translated it into movie language. He talked about the Epic of Gilgamesh or the fairy tale of the Three Shoes or something, and I would talk about, here it is in Ordinary People and Star Wars and various other classic films. So
I even read that as a film student. I read that memo. That's how far that memo went. I was in Florida, and I heard about this memo that said this is the guidebook, the blueprint of all story. And of course, as a film student, you're like, oh my God, I have to read this, and it would circulate around the school, and then I mean, so you did a good job. Without email, without internet, you were able to create a viral piece of material that branded you completely.
Yeah.
I went out and got your book.
It definitely did. And I have another thought about the branding, which is that branding is really a matter of association. You're associating yourself with different things. Like Coke, one of their mottos was Coke adds life. So they say Coke equals life, and whatever you know about life, whatever you like about life, there it is in Coke. So arguably Coke takes away life, but we talk about that later. Is that true? Yes. It's certainly, if you want to kill something, let it swim in Coke for a while. But yeah, if you want to take chrome off your bumper, that's another. It'll eat the chrome right off. But it's this matter of the. Where were we? This is
branding.
On the branding thing is that somehow I was able to do that and brand myself with this thing because it was almost like something that just popped into my head when I was standing at the Xerox machine. I had written this memo. And I said, you can sort of load this up with intention. And I even left a copy of it on the Xerox machine, on the glass, intentionally, thinking the next person coming along may find this, and who knows what they'll do with it. Well, let's see. Let's see where that goes.
Wow.
And I think what happened was an executive came in, copied something, and found that and plagiarized it. He took my name off. He put his name on the cover and sent it up through the company ranks because he thought it was good. And it got to the top guy in the company, Jeff Katzenberg, and he said, "This is great. This is the greatest thing that's happened since popcorn. And all our movies and our animation should everybody should read this." And
eventually, you got credit though.
Yeah, I claimed credit, which is a little out of my character. I'm kind of shy and retiring, but I attacked that one. When I heard that this had happened, I wrote a letter to Katzenberg, and I claimed it. And I said, the word's gotten out that this memo is on your desk, and I wrote it, not this other guy. And I want something. I asked for something, which is I wanted more involvement in the company. And he immediately responded, to my amazement, and threw me together with the animation people. And that was kind of the high point of my involvement with Disney. They were just starting Lion King, and I went over there to talk with the animators and writers. And I thought, okay, now I have to do a sales job, and I have to explain who I am, and I have to tell them what the hero's journey is. But I walked in the door, and the first thing I saw was a corkboard with the storyboard of The Lion King, and it was all mapped out by the hero's journey. Step 1, step 2, step 3.
Really?
My memo. The memo got there ahead of me. And with me doing nothing, it did a complete sales job for me. And just rolled out the red carpet. So I walked in, and they knew exactly who I was and what my idea was. And
now, arguably, Lion King was, for well over a decade, if not 20 years, it was the biggest animated movie ever, financially.
Yes, it was. I must tell you, a bit of a surprise to all of us, not all of us, but many of us who worked on it, because Disney had been on this rocket ship in live action,
God, yeah.
And then they had a couple of, they made 20 live action films in a row that were hits, and nobody does that. So there's something bizarre going on. And then they had made Beauty and the Beast,
Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast,
and those were so good and so revolutionary. They completely revived things. We all kind of felt like, well, The Lion King will take a step back, and it'll just be another picture, and it's
right.
not going to stand up. You can't keep going like that, hit after hit. So you almost hope that one of them will drop back a little and lower expectations, and then you come back and try to top yourself. But
that would have been probably Pocahontas, not Lion King.
Maybe so. Yeah, one of those that followed in the chain. But
right.
It surprised us all. I remember seeing the screening, the opening night. They had a big party, and we enjoyed all that. But the applause when the movie was over was kind of, well, that was good, which is true for almost all Hollywood screenings.
Every single one of them. Absolutely, you're correct.
Yeah. You go, that wasn't too bad, but
right.
But we underestimated the way it would connect around the world, and I've heard that everywhere in every culture. That people say that's a Japanese story, or that's obviously African, but every culture relates somehow. So they did something right, and I had my little part in it. Yeah, I had a little story about that opening sequence, the Circle of Life sequence. They had fully animated that by the time I got there, and they showed me that sequence the first time I met with them. And then the rest of it was either in pencil sketch form or actual Post-it notes on the corkboard, storyboard style. But my reaction to it was there's something missing. And the missing thing was when Rafiki, who's the kind of the mentor of the story, the kind of magical guy, when he holds up the baby Simba and he shows everybody, I said, wouldn't it be cool if those big clouds up there suddenly opened up and a shaft of light came down and lit up the baby? And everybody in the room wrote that down and started drawing pictures of it because the animators communicate.
Right.
And instead of writing notes down, they draw pictures. So everybody drew that, and they stopped the production and put that piece in, which was a big, expensive deal, but they said it was worth it. And that makes the little button on the scene. It's this one little thing, and there's a exactly right place in the music where the music kind of explodes as the baby lion is held up, and that shaft of light just punches it. So
absolutely. It makes the scene. It honestly, with no question about it. I still remember when you were saying it. I see it so clearly in my head. It's like, how could you not have that?
Yeah, and it was like it was all invited and set up by what they had done already. But that one little piece kind of nailed it. And I saw a physiological reaction in everyone in the room when I just said, "What if the shaft of light comes down?" And I paused a minute, and I noticed they're like shivering and quivering and kind of moving around in their seats, and then started furiously drawing that image. So it told me something, and that's very important to me, is that the story or the good ideas actually reach into your body and they do something. They cause organs in the body to react and secrete fluids and make you shiver and make your hair stand on end and make you cry and do all these other physical things to you. So that's a big part of my thinking now, is what I call the organic storytelling, that it's in the organs of the body where the story is actually happening. Your brain is, processing and thinking and comparing, but the direct experience is right there in your heart and your lungs and, your guts.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
And also, we talk a lot about story structure and the hero's journey and everything like that for actual movies, but there is a part of that goes through the marketing of it too, to create a storytelling process of the marketing. And 2 movies recently that have done that amazingly well was obviously the Star Wars movie was probably one of the best marketed movies I've seen in a long time, and Deadpool, another amazingly marketed film. Can you touch a little bit on that and how story played a part in those 2 campaigns?
Yes, that's something I'm very interested in. I've done work with companies that do trailers for movies and done a lot of thinking about how they connect. And it's something in the first case, in the Star Wars case, they're dealing with what you know, and the objective here was to say, you knew this, but you didn't know this. And so there are little things like there's the sort of iconic shot of the current villain with his lightsaber, where the side flames come out when he sort of flicks it on. And that was like, oh, this is telling you, it's plussing this. It's telling you this is going to be the Star Wars you love, but with some new twists. And
right.
A simple thing, but something also a little controversial. Got people talking about what does that mean, and that doesn't even look realistic and possible. And so that all worked very well for them. And with Deadpool, that's just a brilliant job of projecting a voice. It was all about the voice and the kind of iconic look of the character in his reclining, lazy position. Those 2 things together made a real strong campaign.
And opposed to the Batman versus Superman campaign, which told you, from what I hear, I haven't seen the movie yet, but it told you the entire story. It showed you all the points, the big moments already have been given away in the trailer, which is, I think, they had such a potential to do a Star Wars. If they had the confidence, I think that was the big difference. I think the studio behind, with Star Wars, there was a confidence with the marketing. They're like, look, we're just going to just give you just enough to get you excited, and that's what brought everybody out. And with a story like Batman versus Superman, which is obviously like, the fight of the century, they could have done that, but they didn't. They went the complete traditional, old school, let's show them all in the trailer and let's see if we can get some butts and seats on the first opening weekend. Do you, and I don't want to get, I know you, these are some of your clients, so feel free to say no comment.
No. It's fine. These are observations I've had anyway. It's a matter of his choice about it, and this particular technique of telling you everything and giving you all the plot beats was really worked out at Disney, and it was part of their success for a while that they were reassuring you this movie with Richard Dreyfuss or Bette Midler, whoever it was they were putting in movies in those days, back in the 80s we're talking now. They would lay out, okay, then he's in his ordinary world, and then he's going to go to the special world, and it's going to be weird, and funny things will happen, but dangerous things. And then at the end, through the love of a good woman, he'll figure it out. And
right.
that worked for a while, but then people really rejected that. And as you say, it's become a safety. It's a default way to do it, and it's so much better when you really know what you have to sell. I was impressed by one campaign in the last couple of years for Maleficent. The movie looks back at Sleeping Beauty and tells the story from more or less the villain's point of view. They knew what they had to sell. Angelina Jolie with the weird black horns and costume, and they just sold that. That was their game. And so, I think that's the ticket is you have to know what it is you have to sell. And sometimes it is the story or it's a new voice or a new character. You still there?
So I'm going to ask you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go
no,
ahead.
I was going to ask you the same questions I ask all of my guests. These are the toughest questions, so please be prepared. What is the lesson that took you the longest to learn, whether in the film industry or in life?
The longest to learn, I guess that would be something I'm still dealing with, and in that department, I would say honestly, it's getting out of my own way. I'm still learning that I tend to do things the hard way and make things hard for myself and make more of the difficulties than they need to be. So that's been a slow lesson for me that I kind of sum up by something I call, it's not my idea, but the do easy method. If you're interested in this, it's something that was cooked up by the writer William Burroughs to deal with difficulties in his life. But you just sort of approach everything very gently, and where computers maybe drive you crazy and you want to throw things, there's a way to caress them so that it isn't so difficult and painful. And I'm not a master of this by any means, but that has helped me. So that's.
You're still going through your hero's journey in regards to that.
Oh, most definitely. Yeah. Oh, yes.
So what are your top three? Exactly.
Right.
So what are your top three favorite films of all time? No order or anything like that. Just three films that really touched you.
Well, sure. I always start with my Desert Island movie. If denied all other films, what would be the one? And for many years, this has been a movie from the 50s called The Vikings, which is really the source material or very close to the current Vikings TV series that's on the History Channel. They're really drawn from the same literary source, the same historical character. It's the same idea. It's a great adventure movie with Kirk Douglas and Tony Curtis and Ernest Borgnine and James Lee and amazing effects and beautiful ships and all that. Number two would be a movie called Gilda, which is a black and white
one.
And it's just a special film to me because it's a film noir. It's about a triangle of an evil guy and a woman who's associated with him and a young man who used to be her lover and, the loyalties among all those three people. But it's much more profound than that. It's kind of an essay on good and evil and the devil and God and just profound kind of movie. And then a little more modern thing is a film I'm working with right now. I'm getting ready for a lecture in Paris, and I had to do a French film. So I picked a film called Amor, which won the Academy Award a few years ago for Best Foreign Film. And it's about an old Parisian couple, and the wife has a stroke, and she eventually declines, and they have to deal with her complete downfall as a person.
Very uplifting story. Got it.
Yeah, it's a tough one, but just beautifully made, and a great example of simple stories for simple people in the best way. very confident. You mentioned that before. That confidence in filmmakers and storytellers is really nice when you have it, and this guy's very confident. He does a lot of things where he'll just have a black screen, and maybe you'll hear people say, "Are you okay?" And the other one says, "Yeah, I'm all right. No, there's no problem." And they're in bed asleep, and he'll just let that black scene run for almost a minute, and you just kind of breathe and live with it. And boy, that takes confidence. But he's got it.
And what is the most underrated film you've ever seen?
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now, back to the show.
Let's see. I go to a film that's actually kind of hard to find called They Might Be Giants with George C. Scott. And Anne Bancroft, I think, is in it. And it's a play on Sherlock Holmes. It's about a crazy man in New York who thinks he's Sherlock Holmes. And they send a social worker to visit him, and her name happens to be Dr. Watson. So he goes, "Well, I've been waiting for you," and she goes, "But this is all a delusion." And eventually she gets lured into it and realizes he is really the latest incarnation of Sherlock Holmes, or he believes it so much that let's just accept that. And there really is like a Moriarty, a bad guy who's doing things, and they rally.
Sounds wonderful.
All the oddball people in New York are rallied behind them to stand up to this shadow of Moriarty, and it's a wonderful, inspiring film. For some reason, that one's not in a lot of packages, and it didn't get sold, and it's hard to find. But
Got it.
It's a little treasure.
Now, where can people find you?
The best thing would be my website, which is www.thewritersjourney.com. And I also have a blog at WordPress, and that is Chris Vogler's Writer's Journey blog. I don't.
Okay, and can you tell the people?
Yes.
And can you tell the tribe what books you've actually written besides the Writer's Journey, or because I know you've written a few books, correct?
Well, I have. Yeah, actually, I'm building a little library. I wrote, the first book, The Hero's Journey, 20 years ago. Then a few years back, I co-wrote a book with a buddy of mine who's a film director and teacher in New York named David McKenna, and that book is called Memo from the Story Department, and it's about the secrets of structure and character. Memo from the Story Department. Okay. And my original memo to Disney is in that about the hero's journey, but also all the other stuff that David and I have used in our work over the years, other frames, other systems. Like there's a fairy tale analysis technique. There's a way of looking at characters that goes all the way back to the days of Aristotle. There's a chapter on vaudeville and how the traditions of the stage are still useful for filmmakers today. So it's good that way. And then the third thing, the title that I can claim is I wrote a Japanese manga, their version of a comic. Wow. And
sure.
A buddy of mine got into the business of publishing in America and Japan, and he invited me to contribute a story, and so I got one out of the trunk. I took an old movie and novel called Ivanhoe about the time of King Richard and the Crusaders and Robin Hood, and I wrote kind of a sequel to it called Raven the Skull. So that's the title, Raven the Skull. And it was supposed to be a 4-book series. We only did the first one so far, but it was really fun to work with an artist in the Philippines. This guy, this and the editor never met him. I never met him, but we did everything by JPEGs back and forth. I would say I want I want the stirrups to look like this, and I want the sword handle to look like this, and I'd send him the images, and man, it would just come back the next day exactly like I wanted, and it was a great way to work. So
there's another book that you wrote the foreword for that actually was the reason I bought the book, was because you wrote the foreword to it, was Myth and the Movies.
Yes, that's kind of another relative of my books. It's in the family. A man named Stuart Wojtyla took on an important job. I'm glad he did it because it was a lot of labor to do it. But what he did in Myth and the Movies is he said, okay, here's Vogler's idea. How does that actually work? If you do the diagram, what does it look like? He was doing like pie charts of the different steps. And what does it look like in 50 different films? And he chose really good classics in different genres. And he shows there that it changes depending on the genre, and that they spend more or less time in different stages and maybe omit stages or repeat them or something. He found all these neat patterns, sort of subcategories within the general thing. And he said it still works in all these films, but it's flexible, and so you'll find the specifics in mainly by genre, in adventure movies, romances, mysteries, and so forth. He found these shadings of it, and it's a great contribution. So,
Chris, I have to say it's been an absolute joy talking to you today. Thank you so much for taking out the time and dropping a lot of value bombs on the audience in regards to structure.
Kaboom! Yeah, so I'm glad to do that, and you let me run free, and I appreciate that. And you had good questions, so I hope everybody just keeps in mind my motto, which is trust the path. Trust the path that you're on. Keep going till you get there, and that has its own guidance system built in. So good luck.
Thanks, Chris. And all right, so now, Chris, we're out. Thanks again so much. I really do appreciate you taking out the time. I know you're squeezing me in right before your Paris trip, so thank you.
Yeah, I have to keep an eye on that ball, but I'm going to be working on that Amor film I talked about today. So buttoning up my clips on that. But this is great, and I wish you luck with your in the film hustle. You got a pretty good list of people on this now, and
yeah, Linda says hi. I did Linda, and of course Michael.
That's great.
And we and you know that Michael and I have been doing that whole the Heroes 2 Journeys course, the digital course. So hopefully this will help a little bit with sales with that and move forward. So Chris, thank you again so much. I really appreciate it. It's been an absolute thrill talking to you, my friend.
All right, my pleasure. Thanks a lot, Alex.
I can't really tell you what a thrill it was to talk to Chris. I mean, after reading his book and what an impact that book made on me. If you guys have not read that book, you got to go out and get it. Writer's Journey, and you can get all that, and you can get the links to his books, the course, and all his direct websites and stuff like that at indiefilmhustle.com/061. So a lot of you guys in the tribe actually email me a lot of questions, and specifically certain things about different parts of the business, and I do my best to answer them. But I had this idea of creating an episode a week, at least one episode a week, I'm going to try, of just answering questions, just answering straight questions from the tribe. So I wanted to, and I want to call it Ask Alex. I know it's extremely creative, but we're going to try to do this once a week, and we're going to create a YouTube show around it. So you can watch me answer the questions, and then I'll also be releasing it on the video podcast as well as the regular podcast as well. So want to try to get more value to you guys. And this is a community. So, and this is our tribe. So everybody talking, asking me questions. It might be a question that somebody else has that they haven't asked it to me, but this other person did. And if I can answer for everyone, maybe I can help more and more people. So that's the goal of what we do, what I do here at Indie Film Hustles. I want to try to provide as much value to you guys as possible. So if you have any questions, email me at askalex@indiefilmhustle.com. That's askalex@indiefilmhustle.com. And we're going to create a website as well. That would be indiefilmhustle.com/askalex. So you can be able to go straight there, and hopefully we'll have episodes every week on me answering questions for you guys. So I'll be launching that probably within the next month or so, but please send in those questions, and anything about the film industry, film business, film marketing, post-production, whatever you want me to answer, I'll do the best I can to answer those questions for you guys and provide good value to you guys. All right. So again, that's askalex@indiefilmhustle.com, and the website is going to be indiefilmhustle.com/askalex. So thanks as always for listening, guys. And don't forget to head over to filmmakingpodcast.com and leave us a great, hopefully a wonderful review for the show. It helps us get the word out on what we're doing with Indie Film Hustle and help more filmmakers out there. Okay. By the way, I wanted to give you guys an update on something. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show. A few weeks ago, I mentioned and announced that I was doing a feature film called Anya. Well, that has now changed. I have shifted into another project. That project didn't work out the way I wanted it to work out, so I decided to just shift and move to another project. So I'm currently working on another feature film right now, and we'll be announcing what that feature film will be in the coming weeks, and possibly the next month or two, because I'm working hard on it right now and getting a bunch of stuff labeled out. But there will be a feature film made by me and the Indie Film Hustle gang sometime this year, regardless of what that movie is. So I have a lot of exciting stuff coming up as well, guys. I mean, a tremendous amount of exciting news, exciting things I'm going to be bringing to you guys, and exclusive courses, exclusive topics, exclusive projects, all sorts of different things that I'm going to be bringing to you guys to help you further along on your quest to be a working filmmaker and to survive and thrive in the film business. So as always, guys, thanks for all your support. I can't do this without you guys. So thank you. Please share these episodes. Please share our links when you see them on Facebook and Twitter, and in the blogosphere. Just help us and get the word out. All right. I really appreciate everything you guys do. So keep that hustle going, keep that dream alive, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Indie Film Hustle podcast at indiefilmhustle.com. That's INDIEFILMHUSTLE.com.